Jarrod Schulz's story begins like a classic redemption narrative that later twists into something far more complicated and painful. He became widely known through the reality television series Storage Wars, where he was introduced as the ambitious, quick-tempered young gun alongside his partner Brandi Passante. To viewers, he appeared like someone who had escaped a troubled past and built a new life through hustle, risk-taking, and determination. Yet beneath the television persona was a history shaped by early mistakes, criminal charges, and repeated attempts at reinvention. What makes his journey so unsettling is not just the fall itself, but how many times he seemed to rebuild his life only to watch it collapse again. The public saw success, fame, money, family, and business opportunities tied to a hit show watched by millions. But behind the scenes, Jarrod's life was often unstable, marked by financial pressure, emotional strain, and unresolved personal issues. His rise was not a straight path upward, but a cycle of rebuilding and breaking down again. Each stage of his life, before prison, after prison, during fame, and after fame, adds another layer to a story that is less about celebrity and more about consequences, choices, and the difficulty of sustained change. Understanding Jarrod Schulz requires looking beyond television moments and examining how early decisions shaped everything that followed. His story is ultimately about how someone can appear transformed on the surface while still struggling with the same internal battles that defined their earliest years. Early troubles and first arrests. Before fame and television exposure, Jarrod Schulz was already on a difficult path shaped by poor decisions and legal trouble. In his early 20s, he was arrested on drug-related charges involving methamphetamine possession. This moment marked a turning point that would define the trajectory of his life. Although it was not his first encounter with illegal substances, it was serious enough to draw significant legal consequences and begin a pattern that would follow him for years. Initially, the court showed some leniency, sentencing him to a short jail term followed by probation. It appeared, at least briefly, that he had been given an opportunity to reset his life. However, that opportunity was quickly lost. Shortly after his release, he was arrested again, this time for driving under the influence while still in possession of illegal drugs. The rapid return to criminal behavior demonstrated to the court that the earlier intervention had failed. The judge, who had previously extended leniency, responded more harshly the second time. Jarrod was sentenced to 16 months in state prison. This was a major escalation from county jail, placing him in a far more dangerous environment among serious offenders. The experience exposed him to a reality far removed from the small mistakes of youth, forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions in a more severe setting. This early period established a pattern that would echo throughout his life: brief moments of opportunity followed by setbacks caused by impulsive decisions. It also created the foundation of a criminal record that would never fully disappear, regardless of future success or transformation. Prison time and turning point. Jarrod Schulz's time in state prison became one of the most defining chapters of his life. Unlike his earlier brief jail experience, this sentence placed him in a long-term correctional environment surrounded by individuals convicted of serious and often violent crimes. The experience was not just punitive but transformative in a harsh and unavoidable way. During these 16 months, Jarrod was confronted with the reality of what continued criminal behavior could lead to. Being housed alongside dangerous offenders forced him to reassess the direction his life was taking. According to accounts from those familiar with his situation, this period created a form of psychological awakening. He began to understand that without change, his future would likely mirror the people around him in prison. However, while prison may have shifted his mindset, it did not erase his past or fully resolve the habits that contributed to his behavior. The environment may have encouraged reflection, but it also left emotional imprints that would surface later in life. One of these was a tendency to respond to stress with aggression or impulsive reactions, a pattern that would reappear years after his release. When he was finally released at around 21 years old, Jarrod left prison with a felony record, limited opportunities, and a determination to avoid returning. It was a moment of transition, but not a complete transformation. The foundation for change existed, but the long-term stability of that change had not yet been tested by real-world pressures. Life after prison and meeting Brandi. After leaving prison, Jarrod Schulz began rebuilding his life from the ground up. Employment opportunities were limited due to his criminal record, but he eventually found work in sales management at a carpet cleaning company in Tustin. It was not a glamorous job, but it represented stability and a step away from his past. During this period, he met Brandi Passante, a relationship that would profoundly shape both his personal and professional future. Brandi entered his life without judgment about his criminal history, instead focusing on his potential and willingness to change. Their connection developed quickly, and they soon became partners in both life and business. Together, they built a family, welcoming 2 children, Cameron and Peyton. Brandi became a stabilizing force, helping Jarrod maintain direction and responsibility. For many years, their relationship functioned as both a romantic partnership and a business collaboration, with Brandi often described as the more grounded and practical of the two. This period marked a significant improvement in Jarrod's life. He began working in real estate-related ventures and eventually entered the mortgage business during a booming housing market. For a time, it seemed as though he had successfully transitioned into legitimate success. However, this stability would not last. External economic forces soon disrupted the progress he had made, setting the stage for another major turning point in his life: building a family and early business struggles. As Jarrod Schulz attempted to establish financial stability, he and Brandi Passante invested in business ventures that reflected their ambition and desire for independence. One of their early efforts was a second-hand thrift store business, which they hoped would provide long-term income and security. They worked hard to build it into something sustainable, often balancing family responsibilities with business demands. However, their financial situation remained vulnerable. The collapse of the housing market had already devastated Jarrod's earlier mortgage-related work, and the thrift store business struggled to gain consistent profitability. Despite gaining visibility later through television, the business itself faced operational challenges that visibility alone could not solve. They attempted expansion by opening additional locations, but these efforts did not produce lasting success. One store closed within a year, and the original location eventually shut down as well. These failures mirrored earlier setbacks in Jarrod's life, reinforcing a recurring pattern of ambitious starts followed by disappointing outcomes. At the same time, the pressure of maintaining a family while managing unstable income created emotional strain. Although Brandi remained a strong partner during this time, the stress of financial uncertainty began to affect their relationship. The combination of business failure and personal pressure would later contribute to deeper fractures in their long-term partnership. This stage of Jarrod's life illustrates how external success, such as television exposure, does not always translate into stable personal or financial outcomes. Beneath the surface of growing fame, significant instability was already developing. Storage auctions and breakthrough on storage wars. Jarrod Schulz's entry into storage auctions came through a suggestion from family connections, and it would ultimately change his life. What began as a way to recover financially after business setbacks evolved into a national television opportunity when Storage Wars premiered. Alongside Brandi Passante, he became part of a cast of bidders competing for abandoned storage units in hopes of finding valuable items. The show quickly gained popularity, and Jarrod and Brandi stood out due to their dynamic personalities. They were portrayed as underdogs compared to wealthier and more experienced bidders, which made them relatable to audiences. Their arguments, teamwork, and unpredictable bidding strategies became central to the show's entertainment value. As the series grew in popularity, so did their fame. Viewers connected with their chemistry and perceived authenticity. Jarrod's image shifted from former convict and struggling businessman to television personality and entrepreneur. At the height of the show's success, he was reportedly earning substantial income per episode, and the couple became recognizable figures in reality television culture. This success provided validation for Jarrod, reinforcing the idea that he had overcome his past. It also created new opportunities, including spin-off content and business exposure. However, fame also introduced new pressures, including public scrutiny, financial expectations, and the challenge of maintaining a television persona while managing real-life struggles behind the scenes. Fame, money, and expanding pressure. As Storage Wars continued to grow, Jarrod Schulz and Brandi Passante experienced a level of fame they had never previously encountered. Their lives became increasingly public, with their personal relationship, business decisions, and financial status all visible to a national audience. While this visibility brought financial reward, it also intensified pressure in almost every aspect of their lives. At the peak of their success, Jarrod attempted to further establish financial independence through additional business ventures. However, maintaining both a public television career and private business operations proved difficult. The expectations placed on them as television personalities did not always align with the realities of running struggling retail businesses. The pressure of constant filming, public perception, and financial instability created tension within their partnership. While they continued to present a united front on screen, cracks in their personal relationship began to form. Fame amplified existing problems rather than resolving them, exposing differences in priorities, communication styles, and long-term goals. Despite these challenges, Jarrod maintained a public image of success and transformation. To many viewers, he represented someone who had overcome a troubled past and built a legitimate career. However, beneath this image, the foundation of stability was weakening. The same stressors that had affected his earlier life, financial strain, impulsive reactions, and unresolved personal issues, were beginning to reappear in new forms under the spotlight of fame. Bar incident and legal fallout. Years after their separation, Jarrod Schulz and Brandi Passante reportedly encountered each other at a bar in Orange County. What began as an unexpected meeting escalated into a heated confrontation. According to reports, the situation involved verbal arguments that intensified into physical contact, leading to allegations of domestic violence. Witness accounts and police reports suggested that the altercation involved pushing and shouting, prompting law enforcement involvement. Although Jarrod denied the allegations, he was later charged with misdemeanor domestic violence battery. The incident attracted significant public attention due to their shared history and television fame. This legal issue had serious implications for Jarrod's public image and career prospects. It also reinforced concerns about unresolved behavioral patterns linked to his earlier life struggles. The case suggested that despite years of success and personal change, underlying issues related to anger and impulse control had not been fully resolved. Brandi later indicated through public statements and social media that the relationship had been difficult for some time prior to the incident. The bar confrontation became a symbolic moment, representing the final breakdown of a long and complicated relationship. It also marked a turning point in how Jarrod was perceived publicly, shifting from reality TV success story to a figure associated with controversy and legal trouble, career collapse, and present life conclusion. Following the legal fallout, Jarrod Schulz's television career effectively ended. He no longer appeared on Storage Wars, and his public presence diminished significantly. The show that once defined his identity continued without him, while his role in it became part of its earlier history. In the years that followed, Jarrod shifted away from television and focused on running a bar business in California. This move represented a return to more private entrepreneurship, though without the same level of visibility or success he once experienced. While he continued working, his public reputation remained affected by past controversies. His personal life also changed, including a new relationship, but the shadow of previous events continued to influence public perception. Meanwhile, his children transitioned into adulthood during a period marked by instability, family conflict, and media attention. Jarrod's story ultimately reflects a complex cycle of reinvention and relapse into old patterns. Despite moments of success, fame, and financial opportunity, long-term stability remained elusive. His journey illustrates how early decisions can echo across decades and how personal change is often more complicated than outward appearances suggest. In the end, Jarrod Schulz remains a figure defined by both transformation and contradiction, a man who achieved fame and success after a troubled youth, yet struggled to fully escape the patterns that shaped his earliest years.